imperialist capitalist classes, which is based on Lenin's book in 1916 called Imperialism, whereby you have to explain the fact that socialism hasn't come about, that capitalism hasn't led organically to socialism, imperialism, and the defamation of the persons of colour by, although he didn't call it this, the white economic colossus, which is still the justification for many third world radical groups, even now. This mixture of sentimentality, high theory, a Jewish desire for power, and extreme misanthropy, which will use, because it's secularized and has no objectivist moral basis, any means to bring itself in, has almost at times brought our entire culture and civilization to the almost point of disaster. Their armies dominated a half of Europe until relatively recently. Tens of millions of white people grew up under their structures, lying, evading the truth, just surviving. If you did Marxist-Leninism in Warsaw when I was at school in the 70s, it wasn't a joke. You didn't write sort of ironic, quizzical and deconstructive ideas about the founding fathers. You knew that it was a secular religion and you towed your line or things would happen to you. A file would go to the secret police about you. In Romania, in Bulgaria, in Hungary, in East Germany, dissidents would go to the shops in East Germany and there'd be 8 Stasi behind them in a car. Amazing degree of surveillance. Why? Because you need to impose dialectical purity on the masses. Because if they are allowed their own way, they'll just drink, fornicate, consume, and do what they want. You have to hold them to the mark, even by terror. And you even have to build a wall around your country to keep people in. The classical thing is you build a wall to keep enemies out, don't you? You don't keep them in. Now, in closing, I'd like to say that there's been an extraordinary cowardice amongst Western intellectuals in the adoption of these sorts of views. Robert Conquest was a minor poet in Hampstead, and he used to go to all these salons in the 40s and the 50s. And this is Hampstead, ultra-rich, creamy, bourgeois types, many of whom have never suffered anything in their lives. And many of them were Stalinists at this time. Never mind Trotsky, never mind the revolutionary alternative, but actual Stalinists. People who'd read hagiographies, there are plenty of them, written to Stalin. Oh great leader, we are not worthy to kiss the feet of the son of the world proletariat. All this sort of stuff. People laugh at it now, but in those societies then it wasn't a laughing matter. And Conquest was revolted about this and wrote 2 sort of revisionist books, The Great Terror and The Great Famine, about the Ukrainian famine. As a response to that, he also wrote the Lenin book in the Fontana Modern Masters. And although he got facts wrong, and although he was a pioneer in rolling back the mystagogery of that sort of thing, don't forget, when Sartre was told there were camps in the Soviet bloc, he said, oh, but they're based upon love. Based upon love. And that makes it all right, of course. It's the idea is you torture them on their grate, you know, we're doing it to redeem the soul of man, but they don't believe that man has a soul. So that's a bit of a problem. But the one thing I would think, looking back on Marxism after 150 years in all of its variants, is the extraordinary cowardice of some of the most privileged people in Western societies who would not stand up to this type of theory, which is how it always begins, and didn't realise that in the end it would destroy everything they loved and everything they wanted. You even see it in Oxford recently, don't you? Irving and Griffin. Griffin's not a pal of mine, you know. But Irving and Griffin are there at the Oxford Union. They're speaking for us, really, whatever we may think about them as individuals. The mob is outside, seething, you know, mad, staring eyes, all the rest. Smaller than in the past, still there though. If they could, they'd get in and tear them to pieces, and they'd burn down the library as well. They really would. And yet, the ninnies at their Oxford tables will say the day after, there's a terrible riot, you know. These people, Irving and Griffin, coming along and provoking these people, bringing this mayhem and this mess into our lovely little Oxford streets, these monsters. Well, in actual fact, the theory of the mob is the street version of what their ideas would be in power. And these people would have no status. And what they really believe in culturally and spiritually, sensitivity, the Western way, listening to alternative arguments, basing things on empirical knowledge, they'll be out the window. And they've gone along with this out of corruption and being almost too pleasant for their own good, being too comfortable, and for flirting like an adult teenager with ideas of rebellion that are half disbelieved in as they put them, and not thinking that they will be used and used again and again and again to basically destroy nearly all of us. And it's because they haven't realised this that in a slightly softer version we're in the plight that we're in. But everything has its eras, and these ideas are bedding down. And I'll leave you with the fact that recently there's been an attempt in France to revive Sartre's reputation. Sartre was an existentialist and a Marxist. He wanted to bring together two enormous areas of theory. He wrote a book called The Dialectic of Critical Reason. He could only write volume 1. It's 750 pages. New Left Books. It's a real ripper of a read. New Left Books produce it. He wrote it on amphetamine, high in jazz cafes, speeding away like this. He was going to try and find a humanist justification for Stalinism. Yes, he was. That was going to be volume 2. But he could never get the theory right, and volume 2 never appeared. And at the end of his life, Stalin and his common-law wife de Beauvoir joined a Maoist group. These are Western intellectuals, don't forget. Joined a Maoist group and sat with all these Chinese in these little garages. He edited a paper at the end called The People's Fist, or something like that. You know, The People's Fist. And he's totally persona non grata in contemporary France, intellectually. They had a big exhibition recently. Sorbonne, the big Bourbourg Centre, these sorts of things. And no one went.
Excellent.
And no one went. And that is genuinely interesting. So people thought, because Sartre's famous existential line is that hell is other people. Maybe people thought, as they didn't attend those galleries, hell is Jean-Paul Sartre's theories. Thank you very much.